Joe Jonas was the love of my life growing up.
She got quite homesick in America. Obviously, the culture is quite different.
He's absolutely drop dead gorgeous.
A nice little bounce back rebound. They were one of Hollywood's hottest couples.
Did they break up before?
I suspect they probably did.
CCTV footage of him stumbling around. We know that Liam had been working on new music before he died, but we didn't know if it was actually going to see the light of day.
People want to listen to his final records. There have been some pictures released in America of Matt looking a little bit dishevelled.
He was the one they took advantage of, poor Matthew Perry, the doctor who was illegally getting the ketamine and then training his assistant to be able to administer it to Matthew when he wasn't around.
These multimillionaires who do have a chink in their armour, who do have issues with drugs and alcohol, you know, they are preyed on.
Welcome to Virgin Radio's Showbiz Wrap. I'm Maddie, Hale, and every week at The Sun on Sundays, Hannah Hope and I will be breaking down the biggest entertainment stories you need to know. Firstly, we've got an update on Liam Payne's tragic death. Hannah, what can you tell us about this?
So there's been some footage discovered of him on the balcony. It hasn't been released to the public, but it shows that his fall looks to be accidental. He was staggering around and it looks like if he'd fallen onto his bed, you know, he would have just passed out and fallen asleep. But tragically, he stumbled and fell off his balcony.
So it does play into that narrative that people were speculating around last week, that he was likely to be semi-unconscious or fully unconscious at the time of his death.
Absolutely. It doesn't. We know that there was several drugs found in his system, but it does sort of imply that it was an accidental death. It wasn't suicide, and it's just also tragic.
Because the local media in Argentina made this statement this week that basically there is that CCTV footage of him stumbling around on the balcony, which is probably what prompted the hotel staff to call police to say, look, we've got this guest upstairs, he's quite frantic, he's quite erratic, he's breaking stuff. The problem we have is that he has a balcony in his suite and we worry something might happen, which is obviously what did happen in the end, and he's fallen off the balcony, which is obviously so tragic because it's so avoidable.
Yeah, it does feel like the whole thing was just such a tragic accident and it was absolutely avoidable. It's all just so unfortunate the sequence of events ended the way that they did. I think it's wise that they haven't released this footage. I know that there was some very upsetting images posted on TMZ in the wake of his death, just his arm showing his tattoos, but they obviously shocked people around the world, and I think it's wise that they haven't released this inappropriate video. Obviously, his family are absolutely devastated and really struggling to come to terms with the whole tragic situation.
And yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just ridiculous when media puts these things up for a bit of clickbait because there's so much family involved, and you and I both know that the autopsy is probably not complete yet because we know that his body hasn't been taken back to the UK from Argentina yet. But Hannah, I want to get into this new update on his music. We know that Liam had been working on new music before he died, but we didn't know if it was actually going to see the light of day, if it was actually going to be given to the world. And then we heard that that his team were going to drop a single, a record or a song this week, and then they've now turned around and said that they're not going to.
So an artist recorded a track with Liam, and yes, he did post it to his social media and said, right, I want all the proceeds to go to charity, but quite rightly, I think it's been decided that it's too soon and he's going to hold off on releasing it. And then aside from that, Universal, who actually, you know, owned these records that he'd previously recorded earlier this year and the previous year, are planning to release his record posthumously, but they are also waiting for the family to grieve because they do feel like it's too soon. But there have been very early discussions about album covers, maybe using a black and white photo, having the track listings of all the songs that, you know, his fans will want to hear now. He obviously released Teardrops in March, and that did really well. It was a lyric video. It's a real kind of catchy song, actually. It went in a bit of a different dancey direction to what One Direction had done. But I think that, you know, we will be hearing more of his final work.
what we knew about after his death is that it kind of came to public light that he had been dropped by Universal as an artist, that they said that he was kind of not what the direction of fans wanted in this new kind of chapter of his musical career. And now they've turned around and said that they are going to release that work, that record, that album that he'd already recorded, but they just weren't going to put it out because it wasn't going to make any money. But now, now that he's tragically passed, is that what's happened? Universal have turned around and said, no, we actually are going to do it.
Well, no one said anything outright, but sources have told us that there are very early discussions. I mean, there's obviously a huge market now and people want to listen to his final records. So if they withheld these records, some people might think it's cruel that, fans want to hear what was on his mind and fans want to hear the music that he so loved. I mean, even in those final days of him waiting in the hotel room to get his visa, I think he was still working on tracks, laying down ideas. I mean, music really was his life and his passion. But yeah, sadly, money does seem to sort of come into it because I'm sure that they will release the record and give some money to charity, but there definitely will be profit to be made here.
What do you think Liam Payne's family think of that? Because they've clearly been a little bit apprehensive if the artist has gone back and said, oh, I'm going to wait for the family's blessing in order to release that song. And this is an entire album you speak about. Do you think that his family are wanting that, or they might be a bit apprehensive that Universal might be capitalising on their son's death?
I think that they're really dealing with grief in the most tragic way currently. And I think that, right now they're just really focused on repatriating his body and looking to the funeral. I'm sure these sort of other questions about his music are probably more than they can actually deal with at the moment. But I hope, in time that they'll realise that fans do want to hear their son's music. And I guess it's a way of remembering Liam and celebrating him. I mean, another situation that we've got is Netflix's Building the Band show that Liam appeared as a guest judge on alongside Nicole Scherzinger and Destiny's Child Kelly Rowland. They've obviously recorded this show. Liam has shot multiple scenes, but Netflix have actually said that they're not going to actually release it until the family have had time to digest the situation and until they get the family's blessing. I think everyone's quite nervous at the moment to move too fast and they don't want to get criticised. But again, I think that, Liam came from a talent show background, being on X Factor. So again, fans will want to see him in this judging role. I guess it's just timing and not doing it too soon where it seems unsensitive.
And he'd only filmed this in August, so it was only a couple of months before his death. So you wouldn't imagine it would be out so soon regardless for post-production stuff. But as you said, this is, a bit of a full circle moment for him to be a judge with Nicole Scherzinger and with Kelly Rowland, the way he started. So I can imagine it would have been a project that he is actually very proud of.
Yeah, I think he really enjoyed taking part in this project. And Nicole Scherzinger, who recorded with him, said that she had really fond memories of this period. I just think Netflix are in a very difficult position. So the official line is that they've shelved it, paused it for now, and I'm sure we will get to see it further down the line. I hope, anyway. I hope we get to see it further down the line.
I mean, I can imagine so many people would, but we're going to move on to another tragedy. October 28th last year, 2023, Matthew Perry, 54 years of age, tragically died to acute levels of ketamine, where he drowned in his jacuzzi. It's a year on, Hannah, since that happened, and so much has happened since then. We've had 5 people charged in relation to his death. But the latest to come out on his 1-year anniversary is how Matt LeBlanc, who obviously played Joey in Friends, is struggling.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. And actually, you saying it's a year is quite kind of shocking, really, because I feel like it all happened fairly quite recently. But yeah, all the Friends stars came together for the funeral. But yeah, there have been some pictures released in America of Matt looking a little bit dishevelled, not looking his best, a little bit overweight, and some well-placed source quotes saying that he's really struggling. And you can imagine he is, because he was really good friends with Matthew Perry, and I just think it's a very difficult time for him at the moment. And I think as well, he's a little bit older. He's not in the prime of his career and he's made his money. So unless he's got a project to keep him busy, he probably has got a lot of time on his hands to think about the situation.
Has Matt actually alluded to struggling with it publicly before?
I don't think that he has discussed kind of struggles with drugs and alcohol. But I think he's hinted at mental health problems in the past. He likes to keep quite a private life. Do you remember when he presented Top Gear in the UK, which was quite an unusual departure for him a few years ago? He's got a daughter who he lives quite privately with.
Yeah.
And we sort of don't really see him, going about his personal life. So I hope he's okay, and I hope he gets better. I know that they have sold Matthew Perry's old house where he died recently for $8.5 million.
Oh wow.
So quite a lot of money. I just always think with those houses, there's gonna be a lot of speculation around it, because he obviously died in the pool area, didn't he?
Yeah.
And it was famously, there was the Batman sign in the pool area, which I think that they've removed according to aerial photographs. But yeah, I mean, that house will always be synonymous with his death.
Of course, because there were so many drone shots. And when do you get that? When do you see those shots of any situation like that? It was just such an open kind of planned home. But Hannah, has the rest of the Friends cast, they've shared their tributes to him 1 year on.
Yeah, and we are seeing that from the rest of the Friends cast. I always just think it's really special that they did their reunion a few years ago and got everyone to see them together one last time, which unfortunately, going back to Liam, we didn't get with One Direction.
Yeah, which I think a lot of fans were absolutely devastated by. I think that was honestly one of the big reasons why so many fans were coming out to pay respect in those vigils in Argentina, because a lot of people had been publicly crying out for a reunion, thinking it could happen, because it did seem like a lot of the drama had just kind of died down, so to speak. But on the Matthew Perry case, what I would find so hard to deal with if I was a member of his, close friends or a member of the Friends cast, is just how much is unravelled and how much he was taken advantage of in those. It's clear that he was such a vulnerable guy, and the fact that these 5 people charged in the investigation, what they concluded was basically it was a tangled criminal web of this ketamine operation that these 5 people were involved in, and he was the one they took advantage of. Poor Matthew Perry, where he was, given so many shots of ketamine and his poor body couldn't handle it.
You're absolutely right. He was completely vulnerable in this situation. He'd struggled with drugs and alcohol for years and years and years. He'd recently released a book as well about his life, and he'd sort of we all thought he'd sort of come through the worst of it. He had suffered some private relapses over the years. But what you find, unfortunately, with these multimillionaires who do have a chink in their armour, who do have issues with drugs and alcohol, they are preyed on, like you say, by vultures and people who want to make money out of them, sadly.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what it seemed to have done, because, the text messages that the investigative team found was, the doctor who was illegally getting the ketamine and then training his assistant to be able to administer it to Matthew when he wasn't around. The text message reads something like, I wonder how much we can get out of this moron. And in the 4 days leading up, they'd gotten something about $50,000 worth of ketamine, which is absolutely insane.
It's mind-boggling, and you almost imagine, what did these awful people expect to happen? They were injecting these amount, of dangerous drugs into, the poor actor. They had a disaster on their hands, absolutely waiting to happen.
Exactly, and in the initial stages when he did die, he had been doing ketamine infusion therapy, which was, of course, like a very legal way to basically treat depression, anxiety and pain relief. And he had been doing that on a legal level, which is why they thought maybe perhaps there'd something gone wrong with that. But he had the levels of ketamine he had inside his system was astronomical and way out of the realm of what you would get from that infusion therapy. So I think that's kind of where the lines were blurred over what could have been attributed to his death. But obviously we know now that it was from that kind of recreational use of ketamine in his heart giving out.
I think you've also got to ask, the therapist conducting this sort of therapy, you would have thought that they wouldn't practice on someone who had such a public history of drugs and alcohol.
I think that's why they do it, because they think that that's they're sober, and it's a kind of a better way for them to be dealing with their sobriety and dealing with, drug abuse and alcohol abuse for so many years. But I don't think whoever was doing the legal therapy knew that this dodgy doctor was providing this much ketamine on the side to him.
Right. I mean, yeah, it all just sounds, very messy, very dark, and it's good that the authorities are getting involved.
100%. We're going to move on, Hannah, to actually a story that has kept me up. There are a few divorces that quite literally I think about too often to share, embarrassingly enough, and it is Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas. Now, I thought these two were an it couple. I thought they were so well suited. Joe Jonas was the love of my life growing up.
Really?
Yep. Him and Zac Efron, but mostly Joe Jonas. I was in love with him.
He's a very cute, handsome guy.
And he was just so funny in every interview. I mean, I grew up with the Disney Channel, so these were my favourite. He was my guy. Everyone was Nick, Kevin, or Joe. I was Joe. And when he started dating Sophie, I loved it because she was a personality gal. She was hilarious.
She was on Game of Thrones.
Yes.
It felt that, she is beautiful, but it felt that she, like I said, she has a personality, had a bit of girl next door vibes.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was really rooting for her, and I was proud to see like a Brit gal doing well in Hollywood,
Exactly. A Brit girl, she's one of our own. I'm like, you are a fun, hilarious, stunning girl. You get the one that we all want. And I'm glad to have, because I obviously believed at 16 that he was going to fall in love with me. So I'm glad to pass him on to someone who will appreciate him. But then obviously so much has happened in the last year. We find out last year that they've separated. We find out that she wants to go back to England. He's in the US, and it was all very speculatory for months and months and months. But she's finally done this interview with Harper's Bazaar UK, and she's actually really gotten into not crazy details, but more than she's ever given before. And she basically said, on the divorce, I'm going through a legal process right now where I can't say so much, but it was incredibly sad. We had a beautiful relationship and it was hard. And we now know that they actually are officially divorced as of September last month. And it's just so sad. It's just such a sad divorce.
Well, I think as well in that interview, what's quite interesting is that she said that she got quite homesick in America. Obviously, the culture is quite different. You can imagine living in LA. You could be quite isolated. Everyone drives everywhere. And if she's sort of got a close-knit group of girlfriends over here, she seems quite fun, doesn't she, as well? You can imagine she maybe felt a bit lonely. I mean, she also had 2 children with Joe. And living in different countries across the pond from each other.
Yeah.
They've got to navigate childcare and co-parenting. And, Sophie Turner's still quite young. That's quite hard.
She's 27 or 28.
Yeah, really young.
And one of the kids is like 4.
I know. So it all felt like it was, quite a lot to happen to them both, quite young. She obviously fell head over heels with Joe, like yourself.
Like I still am.
But I feel that I'm still rooting for Sophie. She's just had a really successful series on ITV called Joe.
I haven't watched it yet. I really want to, though.
It's got rave reviews and, it's really showing off her acting prowess. We hadn't seen much of her since Game of Thrones, so it shows that she's not just a one-trick pony. And she's got a new love interest.
Well, we're going to get into that. But Joan is the project that she was filming in England when the kids were in America with Joe when they were going through this separation, and she'd gone back to England and was obviously trying to get them in a custody battle, which seemed to be so complicated. But on the note of her being a mother, I thought it was such an interesting quote she said in this article. She said, having children changed me so much in every way. Before I had kids, I was very depressed and anxious, and I would isolate myself a lot. Now I think I live my life for them. I want them to see me having a social life and enjoying work and thriving in my career and relationships. I want them to see a hardworking mum. I'll come back and say, this is why mummy was away. It's because she's doing this for you, so Father Christmas can come with a big bundle of presents.
Good on her. I mean, it's really refreshing, I think, for her to talk about the struggle, about motherhood, being a working actress, but also, a lot of people, I think there was a slight kind of public criticism of her not being around and filming, and Joe maybe having to look after the kids when it was all happening last summer. Yeah. But actually, she's showing that she's girl power, she's earning her own money, and she's putting food on the table for her children. And I think that's really refreshing to see, actually.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. What did you think about that public scrutiny at the time of the announcement that when they were getting separated, the narrative was that Sophie Turner was this party girl and Joe Jonas was staying at home with their 2 daughters, and she got absolutely rinsed. I still say I'm a huge fan of him. I went to the Jonas Brothers literally like 3 weeks ago. But that is the mother of your children. Are you not coming out to, stand by her reputation?
So the difference between UK divorces and US divorces is that in the US, a lot of the files get made public.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, although we do get access to like juicy details about their relationship, it's really unfortunate because there's two sides to every story.
Yeah.
As you know, with divorces, everyone's fighting for like a settlement, they're fighting for custody, and it always gets really nasty. It's so rare that you have a celebrity divorce and, everyone's quite happy at the end of it and they're all kind of really good friends.
Yeah.
So I do think that potentially, I don't know, like you say, Joe Jonas does seem like a nice guy, but maybe with the lawyer's help, he was playing a bit dirty. But it did seem really unfair. And you sort of think, she's still really young. She obviously loves her daughters. She's navigating this as well. Let's not throw her under the bus,
And everyone seemed to be like, oh my God, rallying behind Joe Jonas online. But then the narrative kind of flipped and people were saying, hang on, how do you let this narrative run wild? And then rumours circulated that Joe Jonas's team were planting these stories and briefing the media to tell them this is what's happened, to kind of save him.
Absolutely. And I think as well, you've got to remember he comes from a publicity machine. He was a child star, was it on Disney?
Yeah.
And I guess that, the Jonas brothers went in their different directions and then came back together. So there's probably a little bit of reputation protection going on. And yeah, like you say, nasty stories being planted. But certainly with this new cover shoot for Sophie, it just seems really good that she, has come out on top. She looks like she's doing some work on herself, self-discovery. I think we're going to see her in films for decades.
I'm a huge fan. So I'm heard it here first. Huge fan. I'm excited for her. And yes, we're going to get back on that love interest because she is usually quite private with her life, with her private life. When she was with Joe, before she was Joe, even now. But she posted the 30th birthday post for her boyfriend, Perry Pearson. He's a British aristocrat, I think.
So I'd never heard of Perry Pearson before.
Neither.
But I did a little bit of research. Him and his family are worth a cool £270 million.
Oh,
so good on her. Nice little bounce back, rebound love interest there. And yeah, I bet that...
And he's absolutely drop dead gorgeous as well.
He's good looking, he's rich. He lives in like a multi-million pound flat in
And he's
Fulham.
English, which is nice for her because it's another reason for her to be surrounded by all her English family and friends. I mean, we've no idea where the kids are living, but that's exciting.
And I think Joe was potentially a little bit irked.
Oh, yeah.
The ink was barely dry on their divorce papers.
1 month later.
She is, absolutely thriving.
The Daily Mail reported that Joe Jonas thinks Sophie twisted the knife when she did that post for her boyfriend, Perry. The quote reads, Joe feels like Sophie's over-the-top birthday love post for Perry, her angel, is a slap in the face considering she's been with him since the moment Joe filed for divorce. It's strange that she went and twisted the knife by sharing how much she loves her new man so publicly like this. Do we forget that Joe Jonas has had like 3 girlfriends since they broke up?
I saw that. He's always
He had a girlfriend out in Australia.
I know, he's always stepping out with a new beauty on his arm. So, good on Sophie. I hope she locks that down.
The part of this whole saga that I absolutely loved was, which was obviously quite a hard time for Sophie, but for any Swifties watching the situation unfold, is the fact that they're going through this separation and basically the lawyers, the mediation had Joe and Sophie told, like, you'll keep the kids in New York for a period of time while the mediation's going on. And Sophie Turner apparently reached out to Taylor and basically said, do you know anyone who's renting a house? Because it's obviously a little bit harder for celebrities to be renting apartments in New York, especially with security. And Taylor said, take mine, take my apartment. And in an interview, Sophie Turner literally said, I love her. She gave me a place to live when I had nowhere to go. And obviously anyone that knows Sophie, Taylor and Joe dated in 2008.
Right.
Very public breakup. It was on Ellen in the 23-second phone call that he broke up with her. Drama forever and always came out of it. And now Sophie and Taylor are absolutely best friends.
Do you know what? I'd completely forgotten that Taylor dated Joe. You just reminded me. So, look, we know that Taylor's a girl's girl and she likes to rally round and support, all these heartbroken women. But, yeah, seeing those two hang out together and Taylor kind of step up in Sophie's hour of need. She's a Brit girl. She doesn't know that many people in America. Good on her. And I'd want Taylor Swift as a friend.
And you know what? Even if you're not a Taylor lover, when she started hanging out with Sophie Turner, I was like, another great gal to add to your list of friends. Huge, huge fan of that moment in time.
Her girl squad.
Her girl squad, which I have always aimed to be in, and there is still hope. We're going to move on to, well, speaking of Taylor's girl squad, actually, we're going to move on to another very sad breakup. Zoe Kravitz and Channing Tatum, who actually have been in Taylor's girl squad, Channing Tatum included in that. It was announced this week that the two had ended their engagement and broken up after 3 years. And I think that was a shock for everyone, especially after this big promo trip for their new movie.
Yeah, so they were one of Hollywood's hottest couples. Channing just starred in Blink Twice, which is Zoe's new movie. I actually watched it the other week. It's a really good movie. I'd recommend it. It's a bit scary, but it's like a kind of thriller, but from a kind of female gaze. I would recommend. But obviously the promo for that has just finished, so it felt maybe
weird timing.
Well, it maybe felt a bit predictable, but maybe that they knew their relationship was coming to an end, but to break up in the middle of the promo for their joint movie together wasn't ideal. So did they hold it together? I mean,
that's what I was saying. Did they break up before?
I suspect they probably did, but you know, they obviously wanted this movie to be a success. I think it may have been her big directing debut, and Channing was starring in it. We were seeing him play kind of an Elon Musk character. You know, he wasn't playing the kind of usual.
Is he the villain?
Yes. I don't want to ruin it for you, but he does play a villain.
Okay, that's interesting.
But we saw him out this week smoking. She's been seen without her ring on. So, yeah, it looks like it is official. I've always liked Channing Tatum since he appeared in Step Up years ago. So I'm interested to see who he dates next.
I'm sad because I did think that relationship would stand the test of time, and I thought they were really good together. But he had just gotten a tattoo with her initials on his hand, I think, and then they've only been engaged for about a year.
Yeah. Well, Maddie, that is the kiss of death in celebrity relationships.
What,
getting a tattoo? No, getting engaged is fine, but I think getting a tattoo, you're just inviting fate to take a turn.
Oh, so true. Like Chloe and Lamar Odom.
Exactly.
And it's on the hand as well.
Yeah, it's always somewhere really like obvious so people can see it. So yeah, don't get a tattoo. Just get engaged. Enjoy the romance. Don't get too smug.
It's just so sad. These celebrities, they can't stay together. But an interesting update from the entertainment world, which we're going to finish the show on, is how no one would have expected this. Gisele Bündchen getting pregnant, 44 years old. We're not going to emphasise the age, but I just mean, what? Didn't you just separate from Tom Brady?
Well, you're right. She had 2 children with Tom Brady. They were like America's perfect family for many, many years.
In that beautiful home in Boston.
Oh, good info there. Yeah. I mean, now she's got this, is it a jiu-jitsu instructor? And she's quite far gone, apparently. It's been reported that she's
5 to 6 months.
5 to 6 months pregnant. We've seen little pictures of her bump. I mean, you know, 44 really isn't that old in this day and age.
No, God, no. Especially when you're a health queen like that.
Yeah, and I also think as well, like, you know, men can have children at any age. So I feel, you know...
We've seen that from Al Pacino.
Exactly. So I think good on her to kind of go ahead with this.
How exciting.
And yeah, no, I've always really liked Gisele. I think she's really classy. And seeing her in her mum era in her 40s.
What do you think Tom Brady thinks of this?
I don't know. I feel like he hasn't been the most respectful since they've split. He probably doesn't like that people are sort of rooting for her. I wonder if we'll see him have any more kids.
We've seen it all before with these male celebrities. That's all from us this week. Thanks again to Hannah Hope for joining me. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the latest entertainment news here on Virgin Radio's YouTube channel.